Have you ever woken up from a dream and just thought, what in the world was that all about? Well, today we're diving straight into why our dreams can be so incredibly strange. And stick with me, because we're going to unpack a really fascinating new way to understand what your mind is up to every single night. Okay, let's start with a classic. I mean, who hasn't had this dream, right? You're running late, you can't find the room, you haven't studied a single page, and the final exam is about to start, except you haven't been in a classroom in 20 years. It feels so vivid, so stressful, and yet it makes absolutely no logical sense. So what is our brain even doing? You know, for the longest time, we've had these two main camps for explaining dreams, and honestly, both of them feel a little unsatisfying. You've got the old school dream dictionaries, right? The ones that say a snake always means betrayal. It's just too rigid, too one-size-fits-all. Then you have the other side, modern science, which often says, it's just random brain signals firing off while it cleans up memories. But that just feels kind of meaningless, and it totally dismisses how powerful and real those dreams can feel. Neither one really gets it right, do they?
So that brings us right here. If we want to get to the bottom of why dreams are so weird, we need a new way of looking at them, one that kind of bridges that gap. A framework that says your dreams aren't just random noise, but they're not a universal codebook either.
And here it is, the big idea. This new model suggests that dreams aren't random at all. In fact, they are a deeply structured, almost mathematical transformation of your feelings from your waking life. Your brain takes the emotional structure of your day, and then it rebuilds it, translates it into a story. So how on earth does it do that? Well, in this next part, we're going to look at the secret ingredient that makes it all happen. And that ingredient is something called strain. Okay, so this is where it gets really cool. This model says an emotion isn't just one solid thing. It's actually a combination, like a recipe, made up of more basic ingredients called strains. Think of strains like the primary colors of your feelings. So you might feel anxiety, but that feeling is really a mix of simpler strains, like, say, exposure, judgment, and uncertainty.
Let's make this super concrete. Let's say you're feeling anxious about a big presentation at work. That feeling isn't just a blob of anxiety. It's actually a whole package deal. It's made up of the exposure strain, because your boss is watching you. There's also the judgment strain from that upcoming performance review. And of course, the uncertainty strain about whether the project's even going to work out. Your brain isn't just processing anxiety. It's processing these very specific emotional ingredients.
Right, so we have these emotional ingredients, these strains. What happens next? This is where we look at the brain's dream machine and the incredible three-step process it uses to turn raw feelings into a full-blown story. Think of it like a little factory inside your head. First up, decomposition. That big emotion of anxiety gets broken down into its raw string components. Then comes the really magical part, spatial substitution. Each individual strain goes looking for a symbolic place that can physically represent it. And finally, narrative recomposition. Your brain takes all those different places and weaves them together into the story you experience as a dream. It's this amazing process of breaking down and then creatively building back up. So let's just follow one of those ingredients from our work anxiety example, okay? We've got that potent judgment strain, that feeling of being evaluated, of being tested. Now, that specific strain needs to find a home. And what's the most perfect classic space that can contain the feeling of being judged and tested? A classroom during a final exam. And that is the aha moment. The dream isn't literally about your job or the test. It's about the feeling of evaluation that both of those places share. This is so cool because it leads us to a really practical tool in our next section here, decoding your dream map. We're going to move from the what and why to the how you can actually start to interpret what these spaces in your dreams might be telling you. So you can think of this chart as a kind of Rosetta Stone for your subconscious. It's a space strain map. The big idea here is that the places in your dreams aren't just random settings. They are functional strain containers. So a school or a workplace, that often holds feelings of evaluation and performance. A bathroom could represent a need for release or discharge. And if you're wandering down an endless corridor or flight of stairs, that often maps to the strain of transition or uncertainty. All of a sudden, the weird settings in your dreams start to make a whole lot of emotional sense. And this map points to an incredibly powerful concept, something called the strain equivalence principle. Now, this is what really starts to explain why your dream scenes can shift and morph so bizarrely from one second to the next. Here's how it works. If different places can hold the same emotional weight, the same strain, your brain basically sees them as interchangeable. So you might be dreaming about an office,
And then suddenly, poof, it's a classroom, which can then, without warning, transform into a courtroom. And you're thinking, what is going on? Well, it's because all three of those places are powerful containers for the very same strain, the feeling of evaluation. Your brain is just swapping out the set dressing, but the emotional drama stays exactly the same. Okay, let's zoom out for this last section and really look at the big picture. When we look at our dreams through this new lens, what do they actually reveal about our minds? Well, this model just elegantly explains so much of the weirdness, doesn't it? It tells you why scenes can shift so abruptly. It's just your brain swapping one strain container for an equivalent one. It shows why dream symbols are so deeply personal, because it's your emotional association with a place that matters, not some universal dictionary. And maybe most importantly, it reveals why the feeling of a dream can stay so consistent, even while the scenery is just going completely wild. And look, if you remember just one thing from all of this, let it be this quote, because it sums it all up perfectly. Dreams preserve structure, the strain, while altering form, the space. That's the whole game. The emotional logic underneath is held perfectly constant, even when the visual world is changing every second. So the takeaway here is actually pretty profound. Your dreams aren't just confusing, random puzzles you're supposed to solve. They're more like these incredibly elegant, personalized emotional health reports. They're a nightly summary of the emotional work your brain is doing, all presented in this beautiful language of space and metaphor.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to sleep on. The next time you wake up from a really weird dream, instead of just asking, what did that mean? Maybe try asking, what feeling was my brain working so hard to process? So I'll leave you with this. What emotional work is your brain going to be doing tonight?